The year is 2035 and the world runs on chrome and light. Mega corporations have replaced governments, and the biggest of them all is future tech, a behemoth run by the boy genius turned techno god, Ethan Keller. From our self-driving cars to the synthetic coffee we drink, everything has a little piece of his code in it. And I, Jake, a 20-something hacker living in a cramped apartment that always smelled of ozone and stale pizza, had made it my life's mission to stick a wrench in his perfect machine. My online handle was Dullface. It was a joke, a jab at the glossy, emotionless perfection Keller sold to the masses. My crew ghost, Cypher, and Viper were the best ghost-in-the-machine guys I knew. We weren't in it for the money. Not really. We were digital anarchists, fighting for the last scraps of privacy and freedom in a world that was rapidly trading them for convenience. Our target Project Chimera, future tech's most guarded secret. We didn't know exactly what it was, only that it involved biometric data on an unprecedented scale, and that was enough to make our skin crawl. "You're in, Dullface," Cypher's voice crackled through my Neuralink headset, a direct feed into my auditory nerve. "Firewall 1 is down. You have a 90-second window before their ice trips." My fingers flew across the holographic keyboard floating in front of me, lines of shimmering code scrolling into the abyss of future tech's network. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the otherwise silent room. This was the rush, the high that no drug could ever match. I was a digital god, weaving through layers of security that had cost billions to create. "Ice is adapting. 60 seconds, Ghost warned, his voice tense. I pushed deeper, bypassing proxy after proxy. I could almost taste it, the core data of Project Chimera. The screen before me shimmered, and for a split second, I saw a complex schematic of nanobots interacting with human DNA before I could process it. Alarms blared through my headset, a deafening digital scream. "Get out, Jake, now," Viper yelled. "They're tracing the signal back. They're not just blocking you. They're pushing something back through the connection." Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. A counter-hack of this magnitude was unheard of. I slammed my hand on the kill switch, severing the connection. The holographic keyboard vanished, plunging my room into semi-darkness, lit only by the neon glow of the city outside my window. But it was too late. A sharp, stinging pain erupted in my forearm, right where my Neuralink interface was surgically embedded. I ripped the headset off and looked down. A thin, almost invisible needle, no thicker than a strand of hair, was retracting from my port, leaving a single drop of blood in its wake. "What the hell?" I whispered, my voice trembling. I felt a strange coldness spreading through my veins, a metallic taste coating my tongue. I stumbled back, my legs feeling like jelly, and collapsed onto my worn-out couch. My vision swam, and the last thing I heard was Cypher's voice, distant and panicked, calling my name before I blacked out. I woke up hours later, feeling groggy and hungover, but otherwise fine. Maybe. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog. The failed hack felt like a bad dream. The needle, the pain. It must have been my mind playing tricks on me. I got up, stretched, and felt a weird stiffness in my joints. I chalked it up to sleeping on the couch. "Hackers 0 Billionaire 1, I muttered to myself, heading for the kitchen. It was my roommate Anna's turn to buy groceries, which meant the fridge contained nothing but a questionable carton of soy milk and a single, sad-looking pickle. Anna was an artist, a brilliant sculptor who saw beauty in discarded machine parts. She was also hopelessly disorganized. I was about to rate her secret stash of protein bars when she walked in, yawning. "Morning, sunshine," she said, then stopped, squinting at me. "Whoa, did you, shrink?" I snorted. "Very funny. I just got my ass handed to me by Ethan Keller. I'm not in the mood." "No, I'm serious," she said, walking closer and tilting her head. "You look shorter. Your sweatshirt is hanging off you more than usual." I looked down. She was right. My favorite gray hoodie did seem a little baggier. I rolled my eyes. It probably just stretched in the wash. I walked past her to the bathroom, intent on splashing some cold water on my face to wake up properly. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, and a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Anna wasn't just messing with me. My jawline, usually sharp and defined, seemed softer. The stubble that was always a shadow on my chin by morning was practically non-existent. And my eyes, they looked bigger. Somehow, I leaned closer, my breath fogging the glass. My skin looked smoother, the pores less visible. It was like someone had applied a subtle beauty filter to my face in real life. "Okay, this is weird," I whispered. I ran my hands through my hair. It felt silkier than usual. I shook my head again, trying to dismiss the mounting dread. It was stress, the failed hack, the counterattack. My body was just reacting to the pressure. That had to be it. Throughout the day, the strangeness continued. I went to my day job, a soul-crushing gig doing it for a soulless marketing firm, and my work pants felt loose around the waist. I had to tighten my belt by an extra notch. When I reached up to grab a data drive from a high shelf, a task I did every day, my fingertips barely brushed the edge. I had to stand on my toes. I was definitely shorter, maybe by an inch, maybe more. It was insane. I felt a growing sense of panic, a feeling of being a stranger in my own body. That evening, I was trying to explain it to Anna, who was still looking at me with a mixture of amusement and concern. "I'm telling you, something is happening to me," I said, my voice rising with frustration. "My clothes don't fit right. I feel different." "Maybe you're just coming down with something," she suggested, trying to be helpful. "You do look a little pale." "It's not a cold, Anna," I snapped. She held up her hands in surrender. Okay. Look, why don't you just relax, watch a movie? Forget about Keller and his stupid company for one night." Defeated, I slumped back onto the couch. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just losing my mind. But as I sat there, a subtle tingling sensation started under my skin. A faint itch that I couldn't scratch. It felt like my entire body was humming at a low frequency. I tried to focus on the movie, but my mind was racing. The nanobots, the schematic I saw for a split second, a technology that could interact with human DNA. Was it possible? Could Keller have infected me with something that was actively changing me? The idea was so outlandish, so sci-fi, that I almost laughed at my own paranoia. And then my datapad chimed. An email. It was from an encrypted, untraceable address. My blood ran cold when I saw the subject line, "A gift from Future Tech." With trembling hands, I opened it. There was no text, just a single, high-resolution image. It was a picture of me, taken that morning, walking to work, but it had been altered. My face was softened even more, my hair digitally lengthened to shoulder length, my body subtly reshaped with slimmer shoulders and slightly wider hips. Underneath the manipulated image was a single line of text. "Dull face, I think your altered appearance suits you. This is just the beginning. Welcome to Project Chimera." It was signed with a simple, elegant K. I stared at the screen, the breath knocked out of my lungs, the humming in my body intensified, the tingling spreading from my limbs to my core. It wasn't paranoia, it wasn't stress, it was real. Ethan Keller hadn't just defeated me, he had taken control of my very biology. He was rewriting me from the inside out. My anger, my fear, my desperation, it all coalesced into a single, terrifying thought: I was becoming his creation. The game was no longer about hacking a corporation, it was about fighting for my own identity before it was erased completely. A new email chimed, a follow-up. This one was just a set of coordinates for a warehouse in Queens and a time 10 a.m. tomorrow. The message was clear. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a summons. And I had no idea if the person who showed up tomorrow would still be me. The cab ride to Queens was a blur of anxiety and disbelief. My mind kept replaying the events of the last 24 hours, trying to find a loophole, an explanation that didn't involve microscopic robots rewriting my DNA. But every time I looked at my reflection in the car window, I saw the undeniable truth. My face was softer, my body felt leaner, less angular. It was subtle, but it was there. I was losing myself, pixel by pixel. The address led me to a desolate industrial park, a graveyard of forgotten factories. The warehouse was a massive, windowless cube of corrugated metal. Rusting at the seams, it looked abandoned, but I knew better. Keller's touch was always sleek, hidden beneath a veneer of normalcy, or, in this case, decay. The main roll-up door slid open with a silent, frictionless hum as I approached. Revealing a cavernous, dark interior, I stepped inside, and the door slid shut behind me, plunging me into near total darkness. A second later, strips of neon light flickered on, casting the space in a sterile, pinkish-purple glow. The air was cold, smelling of sanitized metal and ozone. In the center of the vast, empty floor, a single chrome pedestal stood waiting. As I moved closer, a drone detached from the high ceiling, descending with a soft whir. It was a sleek white orb, featureless except for a single, glowing pink lens that focused on me. It circled me once, its lens pulsing as it scanned my body from head to toe. Then, a voice emanated from it, calm, feminine, and unnervingly serene, like a high-end virtual assistant. Subject identified Jacob Miller, alias Dullface. Welcome to Phase 2 of your integration. What is this? I demanded, my voice echoing in the empty space. What have you done to me? Compliance is required for a smooth transition, the drone replied. Ignoring my question, its tone was polite but carried an unyielding authority. Your previous biological and aesthetic parameters have been flagged for recalibration. Commencing outfit calibration for your new role. Feminine base protocol activated. My heart pounded in my chest. Feminine base protocol. Before I could even process the words, the chrome pedestal next to me hissed, and a transparent capsule rose from its center, bathed in a soft white light. Inside was a set of clothes, not just any clothes. It was an outfit that screamed corporate servitude a severe. Black pencil skirt that looked impossibly tight, a crisp white silk blouse, a pair of nude-colored sheer stockings with delicate lace tops, and, most horrifyingly, a pair of pastel pink high heels that looked like instruments of torture. You've got to be kidding me, I breathed, a hysterical laugh bubbling in my throat. You want me to wear that? No way, not happening. I turned to leave, to find a way out of this nightmare, but the moment I made a move toward the door, a searing pain shot through my entire body. It was an electric fire, starting in my bones and spreading to every nerve ending. I cried out and collapsed to my knees, clutching my head. Resistance will activate the nanobot's corrective functions, the drone stated calmly. Discomfort is a temporary but necessary byproduct of non-compliance. We recommend cooperation. The pain subsided as quickly as it had come, leaving me trembling and gasping on the cold concrete floor, but the effects lingered. A strange, intense itching started all over my body, deep beneath the skin. I watched in horror as the hair on my arms and legs seemed to retract, disappearing completely, leaving my skin unnervingly smooth. I ran a hand over my face. The last remnants of my morning stubble were gone, the skin on my jaw as soft as a child's. A dull ache started in my hips and chest. It felt like my bones were shifting, grinding against each other. The ache in my pelvis intensified, a pulling, widening sensation that made me feel sick to my stomach. At the same time, my chest began to feel heavy. A puffy soreness bloomed around my nipples, and I could swear I felt a new fullness developing under my sweatshirt. Panic gave way to pure terror. This wasn't just superficial changes anymore. Keller's machines were reshaping my skeleton, my musculature. Defiantly, I tried to stand, to pull my old familiar jeans back up, but they wouldn't fit. They were too tight around my newly flaring hips. I couldn't even get them past my thighs. My sweatshirt felt wrong, constricting across my increasingly sensitive chest. My own clothes were rejecting me. The message was brutally clear. The body I had known my whole life was being re-engineered to fit the clothes in that capsule. I was trapped. Every cell in my body was now a prison guard, enforcing the will of a man I'd never even met. Defeated. My shoulders slumped. I looked at the outfit on the pedestal. It was either wear that or endure agony as my body was forcibly changed anyway. There was no choice. Shaking with a mixture of rage and humiliation, I stripped off my now ill-fitting clothes. The cold air raised goosebumps on my newly smooth skin. My body felt alien to me. The curves were subtle, but they were undeniably there. I was softer, rounder. I picked up the silk blouse. The fabric was cool and slippery against my fingertips. As I put it on, it felt wrong, too light, too delicate, but it fit perfectly. Next were the stockings. I'd never touched anything like them. The sheer material felt like a spider's web against my skin as I clumsily rolled them up my legs. The lace tops clung to my upper thighs, a sensation that was both foreign and strangely intimate. The pencil skirt was the worst. It was high-waisted and brutally tight, forcing me to stand up straight, my posture corrected by its unforgiving design. It hugged my hips and rear in a way that made me feel exposed. On display, my legs felt trapped, my stride restricted to short, mincing steps. Finally, the shoes, the pink heels. I stared at them for a long moment, my stomach churning. Putting them on felt like the final act of surrender. I slid my feet into them, my arches screaming in protest as they were forced into an unnatural angle. I tried to stand, wobbling precariously. I felt like a newborn foal, clumsy and pathetic. Gait and posture recalibration commencing. The drone announced. A series of tiny sharp jolts shot up my legs from the soles of my feet. My muscles spasmed and then resettled. My balance shifted automatically, my hips tilting forward slightly to compensate for the heels. The wobbling stopped. I was standing perfectly still, my posture unnaturally perfect. A section of the metal wall behind the pedestal shimmered and became a full-length mirror. I forced myself to look. The person staring back at me wasn't Jake. It was a stranger, a tall, slender woman with my eyes. My face was the same, yet completely different. My lips looked fuller, my cheekbones more pronounced, my eyes wider and more expressive. The smooth, pale skin made the green of my irises pop. My dark hair, which felt just a little longer than it had this morning, framed a face that was disturbingly pretty. The tailored outfit hid some of the changes but accentuated others, creating an hourglass silhouette that was utterly alien. I saw a flicker of the old me in the eyes of the reflection, a terrified, angry man trapped behind a feminine mask, but the mask was quickly becoming the reality. Phase 2 complete, the drone said. It's mission accomplished. Your new identification and access credentials have been uploaded to your datapad. Your assignment begins tomorrow. Report to the main lobby of FutureTech headquarters at 0800 hours. You will be working in the Public Relations Department as an executive assistant. Your new identity is Jade Parker. A datapad on the pedestal lit up, displaying a FutureTech ID card with the face of the woman in the mirror and the name Jade Parker printed underneath. Jade Parker. I choked out the name. It felt like ash in my mouth. No, I'm Jake Miller. You can't do this, I screamed, my voice cracking. I lunged toward the drone, my hand outstretched to smash it. A wave of pain, 10 times stronger than before, slammed into me. I collapsed, writhing on the floor, the tight skirt and heels making my desperate movements feel even more pathetic and constricted. Negative reinforcement initiated. The drone chirped pleasantly. Compliance is key to your well-being, Jade, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. With a final, parting whir, the drone ascended back into the ceiling. The roll-up door slid open, revealing the gray afternoon light. I was free to go, but as I lay there, trembling in my ridiculous pink heels, I knew I wasn't free at all. Jake Miller had walked into this warehouse, but Jade Parker was the one who was going to walk out. And as I struggled to my feet, my body already adapting to its new reality, I was starting to realize that resisting might not just be futile, it might be impossible. The ghost of who I was already starting to fade. Walking through the revolving doors of FutureTech HQ felt like willingly stepping into the belly of the beast. The lobby was an atrium of glass and white marble, soaring 50 stories high. Sunlight streamed in, glinting off chrome fixtures and the silent, floating information drones that zipped through the air like metallic hummingbirds. Everyone moved with a quiet, efficient purpose, their faces reflecting the cool, ambitious aura of the company itself. And then there was me, Jade Parker, a complete fabrication, a living, breathing Trojan horse, walking on 3-inch heels that felt like stilts. My heart was a frantic bird beating against the cage of my ribs. The pencil skirt I'd been given yesterday had been replaced by a charcoal gray one, paired with a soft baby blue blouse and the same style of heels, this time in a sensible black. My hair, which had inexplicably grown another inch overnight, was pulled back in a neat professional ponytail as per the instructions on my new data pad. I was also wearing makeup, The drone back at the warehouse had helpfully informed me that nanobots had applied a base layer of cosmetic enhancers to my skin, including a subtle tint on my lips and a darkening agent on my eyelashes. I looked like I'd just stepped out of a corporate catalog, and I had never felt more like a fraud in my life. I gave my new name at the security desk, and my ID badge was printed without a hitch. The system accepted me. As far as Future Tech's digital world was concerned, Jake Miller was gone, and Jade Parker was a new hire in the PR department. The elevator ride up to the 34th floor was an exercise in terror. I stood in the back corner of the glass-walled car, acutely aware of my reflection. I tried to stand like a guy, shoulders back, feet slightly apart, but my body wouldn't cooperate. The nanobots, or maybe just the cut of the clothes and the heels, kept pulling me into a different posture, hips slightly forward, one foot placed delicately in front of the other. I caught a man in a sharp suit glancing at my reflection, his eyes lingering for a moment before he looked away. I felt a hot flush of shame crawl up my neck. Just as I was about to reach my floor, the elevator stopped, the doors opened, and he stepped in. Ethan Keller. In person, he was exactly as infuriating as his public image suggested. He was young, maybe 30, with sharp features, dark hair that was artfully messy, and eyes so intelligent they seemed to see right through you. He wore a simple black t-shirt and designer jeans, a stark contrast to the suits around him, a clear statement that he was above his own corporate dress code. My entire body went rigid. This was him, the man who had taken my life, my identity, and twisted it into this puppet. He glanced around the elevator, his eyes briefly sweeping over me without a flicker of recognition. Then he smiled, a warm, charismatic smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good morning," he said to the elevator's occupants in general. Then his gaze landed directly on me. "Welcome to Future Tech. You must be new. I don't believe we've met." My blood turned to ice. He was playing a game. He knew exactly who I was. I could see it in the faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but what came out was not my voice. "Good morning, Mr. Matt Keller." A soft, slightly breathy female voice said, "It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Jade Parker." I clamped my mouth shut, horrified. The nanobots. They had auto-corrected my voice, pitching it higher, smoothing out the bass tones, turning my intended growl into a polite, feminine greeting. I sounded pleasant, cute. Even the shame I felt was so intense it was almost a physical blow. Ethan's smile widened. "A pleasure, Jade. Welcome aboard." The elevator doors opened on his floor, the executive level. He gave me one last look, a look that was both proprietary and amused. Before he stepped out, I could feel his eyes on my back until the doors slid shut. I stumbled out on the 34th floor, my legs shaking. The PR department was an open-plan office, buzzing with quiet energy. A woman with a sleek blonde bob and a fiercely efficient demeanor approached me. "Jade Parker, I'm Kelly, head of internal comms. I'll be showing you the ropes. Your station is over here." For the next few hours, I was in a daze. Kelly was a whirlwind of information, explaining content calendars, press release protocols, and brand synergy. I tried to focus, but all I could think about was Ethan Keller's knowing smirk. He wasn't just controlling my body, he was enjoying it. He had put me on display in the heart of his empire, a living trophy of his victory. Kelly was surprisingly nice, in a brisk, no-nonsense way. "The dress code is pretty straightforward," she explained, gesturing to her own tailored sheath dress. "Business, professional. Skirts or dresses are preferred for client-facing roles. And a touch of lipstick never hurts. It shows you're making an effort. You look great. By the way, very put together." "Thanks," I mumbled. And again, the word came out as a soft, feminine whisper. God, I hate this. The biggest challenge of the day was simply moving. Walking in heels on the polished marble floors was a nightmare. My first few steps were clumsy, a series of awkward, jerky movements. I felt everyone's eyes on me, but then that strange recalibration kicked in again. Tiny jolts ran up my calves, my ankles adjusting, my core tightening, my balance shifted, my stride lengthened, and my hips began to sway in a gentle, rhythmic motion to compensate. It happened unconsciously. I was walking, and to my absolute horror, I was walking well, gracefully, even. I caught my reflection in a darkened window and saw myself striding through the office, hips swaying, ponytail swinging. I looked like I'd been walking in heels my whole life. Later that afternoon, Kelly asked me to deliver a file to the legal department on the 28th floor. As I waited for the elevator, I found myself standing next to Ethan Keller again. This time, we were alone. The silence was deafening. I stared straight ahead at the polished steel doors, my heart hammering. I could feel his gaze on me, examining me from head to toe. I snuck a glance at our reflections in the doors. He was standing casually, but his eyes were fixed on the image of Jade. He watched the reflection of my swaying hips as I shifted my weight, a tiny, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. He was enjoying the show. He was admiring his handiwork. The rage that had been simmering inside me all day boiled over. I had to say something, to let him know the man he was torturing was still in here. I turned to him, my fists clenched at my sides. "You won't get away with this," I tried to say, my voice low and menacing. But the words that came out were, "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" The voice was Jade's, deferential, quiet, professional. The nanobots weren't just changing my pitch. They were filtering my intent, twisting my words of rebellion into phrases of submission. Ethan turned to face me fully, his expression one of mock concern. "Everything is perfect, Jade," he said, his voice smooth as silk. He took a small step closer, invading my personal space. "In fact, you're exceeding all my expectations." He reached out, as if to adjust the collar of my blouse, his fingers brushing against the skin of my neck. The touch was light, fleeting, but it sent a jolt through me, not of pain, but of something else, a weird electric shock that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. The elevator chimed, and the doors opened. He pulled his hand back, that infuriating smirk back in place. "Have a good afternoon, Jade." I stood there, frozen, as he walked away. The spot on my neck where he had touched me tingled. I was trapped, not just in a body that wasn't mine, but in a role I was being forced to play, my every action and word manipulated. The inner struggle was becoming a losing battle. Jake was screaming from inside his prison of flesh and bone, but Jade was the one smiling politely and learning to walk the walk, and I was terrified that soon Jake wouldn't be able to scream at all. Weeks bled into a month, and the sharp edges of my panic began to dull into a constant, grinding state of anxiety and surreal acceptance. My life fell into a bizarre routine. I would wake up in my apartment, my body feeling a little softer, a little more curved each day. I would put on the corporate uniform of Jade Parker, the skirts, the blouses, the heels, and apply the makeup that was now part of the morning ritual. Anna had mostly stopped asking questions, settling into a state of bewildered concern. She knew something was deeply wrong, but she couldn't possibly guess the truth. She just thought I was having some kind of identity crisis, which, in a way, was the understatement of the century. At work, I was becoming competent, frighteningly so. The PR tasks that should have been alien to me, writing cheerful copy about Future Tech's latest bioenhancements, coordinating press junkets, charming visiting journalists, came with an unnerving ease. The nanobots were clearly doing more than just altering my body. They were streamlining my cognitive functions for the tasks assigned to me. I'd be struggling with a sentence, and suddenly the perfect corporate-friendly phrasing would just pop into my head. Jade was a good little worker bee. Jake wanted to burn the whole hive down. This duality was tearing me apart. In the quiet moments, in the sterile bathroom stalls, or on the crowded subway ride home, I would close my eyes and try to remember what it felt like to be me, to have stubble on my chin, to have broad shoulders, to walk with a heavy, solid gait. But the memories were becoming faded, like old photographs. The physical reality of being Jade was overwhelming the memory of being Jake. I was so used to the sway of my hips when I walked, the soft cadence of my new voice, the feeling of silky fabric against my smooth legs, that they were starting to feel normal, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. Ethan Keller remained a distant, ominous presence. I would see him in the halls or in meetings, and he would always give me a polite nod and a small, private smile, a silent acknowledgement of our secret. He was the zookeeper, and I was his most exotic exhibit. He seemed content to just watch me, to see how I adapted to my new enclosure. The breaking point, the moment the line between Jake and Jade blurred beyond recognition, came during a product test for a new future tech line called AI Skinwear. Kelly called me into a private showroom. "Jade, we need a last-minute model to test the sensory feedback of the new line before the investor demo. You have standard female metric proportions, so you're perfect for it." Before I could protest, she led me to a changing room where a sleek pearlescent bodysuit was hanging. It looked like something out of a sci-fi movie, seamless and shimmering, almost like liquid mercury. "This is the Embrace model," Kelly explained cheerfully. "It's designed to be a second skin. It reads the wearer's biometrics and optimizes everything: temperature, muscle support, even skin hydration. But its main feature is enhanced sensory input. It's supposed to make you feel more. Just put it on. The AI will calibrate it to your body." With a sense of impending doom, I took the bodysuit. In the privacy of the changing room, I stripped off my work clothes. My body in the mirror was a familiar stranger now. The changes were no longer subtle. My waist had nipped in, my hips had rounded out, and my chest had developed into a pair of small, but distinctly female, breasts. The nanobots had been thorough. I stepped into the skinwear. The material was cool and impossibly smooth, and it flowed over my skin like water, sealing itself without a single zipper or seam. As it settled, it tightened, conforming to every single curve of my body. A soft hum vibrated through me as the suit calibrated, and then the sensation hit me. It was indescribable. The suit wasn't just on my skin, it felt like it was my skin. I could feel the air in the room, not as a temperature but as a textured presence against my body. The suit was sending micropulses into my nerve endings, simulating the sensory data of a perfectly formed female physique, where my body was still biologically in transition. The suit filled in the blanks. The phantom feeling of my non-existent breasts was replaced by the weight, softness, and sensitivity of real ones. The subtle curves of my hips felt more pronounced, more correct. Even the most intimate, forbidden part of my anatomy felt complete, soft, female, real. I felt a wave of vertigo, a profound sense of disorientation. The suit was creating a perfect illusion, a sensory lie that was more real than my own biology. It was terrifying, but underneath the terror was a spark of something else, a strange, illicit thrill. For the first time, I wasn't just a man forced into a woman's clothes. I was, for all intents and purposes, a woman, and my body was singing. It was a chorus of sensory information I had never known existed. I stumbled out of the changing room, my movements unsteady. Kelly was gone, but the showroom's main lights were dimmed, and standing there, leaning against a console, was Ethan. He must have dismissed Kelly. We were alone. "Remarkable, isn't it?" he said, his voice low. He pushed off the console and walked slowly toward me. "The line between the digital and the physical is dissolving. Jade, why settle for the body you were born with when you can have the body you were designed for?" I was speechless. I couldn't tear my eyes away from him, my mind reeling from the sensory overload. He stopped right in front of me, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "You wear it well," he said, his eyes tracing the lines of the bodysuit clinging to my form, "almost like it was made for you." He reached out, not to touch me, but to adjust the high collar of the suit at my neck. His knuckles brushed against my throat, and the sensation was explosive. It wasn't just a touch, it was a cascade of information. The suit amplified it, sending a bolt of pure, unadulterated pleasure through my nervous system. My breath hitched, and my heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic, wild rhythm. I felt my knees go weak. I looked past him, at our reflection in a large, darkened screen on the wall. I saw the scene as a third party would: a powerful, confident man and a woman in a skin-tight silver suit, looking up at him with wide, startled eyes. Her lips slightly parted. She looked vulnerable, captivated. And then I saw me smile. It wasn't a big smile. It was a tiny, involuntary upturn at the corner of my lips. It was a reaction I had no control over, a physical manifestation of the pleasure my new nervous system was experiencing. I saw it, and Ethan saw it too. His own lips curved into a slow, satisfied smile. He knew he was breaking me. No, he was remaking me. And the most horrifying part was, a small traitorous part of the person I was becoming was starting to enjoy the process. Jake was still in there, screaming in silent rage, but his voice was getting fainter and fainter, drowned out by the symphony of new sensations that Jade was feeling for the first time. He leaned in, his lips close to my ear. "The mirror doesn't lie, Jade," he whispered. Then he stepped back, leaving me trembling in the center of the room. The Jake inside me wanted to rip the suit off, to run, to fight, but the Jade that was standing there, her body flush with a strange new warmth, simply watched him go, one hand unconsciously rising to touch the spot on her neck where his fingers had been. The battle for my identity wasn't just a psychological one anymore. It was being fought on a neurological level, and I was losing. The invitation arrived on my datapad a week later. It was for the annual Future Tech Innovations Gala, the company's most prestigious event. It was a night where Ethan Keller would unveil his latest world-changing technology to an audience of investors, rivals, and the global media. It was the very same event that I, as Dollface, had tried to hack just a few months ago. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. The invitation was addressed to Jade Parker, and a note from Ethan's office was attached. "Mr. Keller requests your presence at his table. A formal dress has been arranged for you. Please report to the Executive Design Lab for a fitting at 5 p.m. It wasn't a request. It was a command. He wasn't just forcing me to attend. He was making me his date, his showpiece. He was going to parade his creation in front of the whole world. The part of me that was still Jake seethed with a white-hot rage. He would be on stage, celebrating his genius, while I stood in his shadow, a testament to his cruelty and power. The design lab was like a sci-fi tailor shop. An AI-driven system scanned my body, and robotic arms wove a dress around me using shimmering, programmable fabric. The final product was a masterpiece of technology and couture. It was a floor-length gown of liquid silver that clung to my body like a second skin. Not unlike the skinwear suit, thousands of tiny LEDs were embedded in the fabric, creating a subtle, shifting pattern like starlight on water. The dress was backless, dipping low, and the neckline was a tasteful but definite plunge. It was designed to be looked at. I looked at myself in the mirror, and for a moment, I forgot to be angry. The woman staring back was breathtakingly beautiful. The dress accentuated every new curve the nanobots had gifted me, making me look elegant, statuesque, and completely irrevocably female. That night, a private car took me to the gala. Walking into the grand ballroom on Ethan's arm was the most surreal experience of my life. The room was a galaxy of flashing cameras, clinking champagne glasses, and the murmur of hundreds of conversations. Every head turned as we entered. They weren't looking at me. Not really. They were looking at the woman with Ethan Keller. "Smile, Jade," Ethan murmured, his hand resting possessively on the small of my back. "You're the face of the future." His touch sent a familiar, unwanted jolt through me. The nanobots, I realized, were likely programmed to react to him, to his specific biometric signature. My body responded to his touch with a rush of warmth, a quickening of my pulse. It was a manufactured attraction, a chemical leash. I hated it, and I hated him for it. But I couldn't stop my skin from flushing or my breath from catching. So I smiled, a perfect, polite smile, and let him lead me through the crowd. We sat at the head table, surrounded by billionaires and tech visionaries. I played my part, nodding and smiling, my soft voice making polite conversation. Jade was the perfect corporate girlfriend, poised and charming. Jake was screaming, trapped inside, watching this horror movie through her eyes. Finally, the moment came, the lights dimmed, and Ethan took the stage to a thunderous applause. He was a master showman, captivating the audience with his vision of a future perfected by future tech. He talked about personalized medicine, AI-driven education, and sustainable energy. Then he paused, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. "We believe in a future where human potential is not limited by biology," he said, his voice resonating through the ballroom. A future where we can be whoever, or whatever, we want to be, where identity itself is fluid and customizable. He was talking about me. This whole speech was about me. My blood ran cold. After the presentation, as the party resumed, the whispers and stares intensified. People knew I was someone important to him, but they didn't know why. Ethan led me to a quieter balcony overlooking the glittering city skyline. "You've been very quiet tonight," he said, turning to face me. The starlight pattern on my dress shimmered in the moonlight. "I'm just enjoying the spectacle," I said, the words coming out with a hint of sarcasm that the nanobots, for once, didn't filter out. He chuckled. "You know, I knew Dollface would find a way back into my world. I just never imagined he'd look this good doing it." The casual way he said it, the confirmation that this had all been a deliberate, calculated game, shattered the last of my composure. "You knew," I whispered, my voice trembling all this time, "at the office. You pretended not to know." "Pretended, no, I was observing." He corrected me. Taking a step closer, I created a hypothesis, and I was watching the experiment unfold. And the results? They're fascinating. He was so close now, the scent of his expensive cologne filling my senses. He raised a hand and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from my face, his fingers lingering on my cheek. The programmed response kicked in immediately. My heart fluttered, my skin tingled, and my lips parted slightly in anticipation. My body was betraying my mind in the most profound way possible. "Tell me." "Jade," he murmured, his voice a low caress. He leaned in, his eyes fixed on my lips. "Do you still hate me?" The question hung in the air between us. The Jake part of my brain screamed, "Yes, I hate you more than anything," but I couldn't get the word out. My throat felt tight. My mind was a civil war. Jake was filled with revulsion and rage. But Jade was a creature of manufactured desire. Her body, conditioned by the nanobots, craved his approval, his touch. The conflict was paralyzing. He saw the war in my eyes. He saw my trembling. He smiled, a slow predatory smile. I thought so. He leaned in further, and for a terrifying second, I thought he was going to kiss me. I wanted to recoil, to slap him, to run, but my body was frozen, held captive by the digital puppet strings he controlled. Instead, he simply pressed his lips to my cheek, a soft, fleeting kiss that was somehow more intimate and violating than a real one. It was a kiss of ownership. "Good girl," he whispered against my skin. He pulled back, leaving me breathless and shaking, my mind in turmoil. The hatred I felt for him was a pure, solid thing, but intertwined with it now was a confusing, terrifying thread of desire, a desire that wasn't mine, but was happening in my body. He hadn't just changed my appearance, he had hacked my emotions, my very capacity for attraction. Jake was still fighting, but he was losing ground. The ghost in the shell was being overwritten by a new, more compliant operating system, and its name was Jade. The gala was a turning point. The last vestiges of denial were stripped away, leaving only the cold, hard reality of my situation. Ethan wasn't just punishing me, he was reprogramming me, turning me into his perfect creation. The manufactured desire I felt around him was the most terrifying weapon in his arsenal. It was an invasion far more intimate than changing my body. He was colonizing my soul. I knew I couldn't fight him on his terms. Physical resistance was met with pain. Verbal resistance was auto-corrected into submission. My only hope was to get back to what I did best. I had to fight him in the digital world. I had to become Dollface again, even if it was from inside the body of Jade Parker. It was a risky, desperate plan. I started using my position as a PR assistant to my advantage. I had access to the internal Future Tech network, albeit a low-level one. At night, after Anna was asleep, I'd lock myself in my room, the glow of a data pad illuminating my face. My fingers, now slender and graceful, flew across the holographic keyboard with their old speed and precision. Some instincts, it seemed, the nanobots couldn't erase. I reached out to my old crew on the deepest, most encrypted channels of the dark web. "Dollface, is that really you?" Ghost's text-based voice was filled with disbelief. "It's me," I typed back, "but things are complicated." It took hours to explain. I sent them a recent picture of Jade Parker. The silence on the channel was deafening. "Jesus Christ, Jake," Viper finally wrote, Keller turned you into a girl." "He's done more than that," I explained. "He's got nanobots in my system. They control everything. I need your help. I need a way to reverse it, a code to disable them." They were shocked, horrified, but they were my crew. They were in for weeks. We worked in secret. They focused on creating a counter-virus, a piece of code that could piggyback on Future Tech's own internal network and, if uploaded directly into my system, could theoretically deactivate the nanobot's control protocols. My job was the hardest part. I had to find a way to physically connect a device to my own neural port, the same one the needle had penetrated without anyone at Future Tech noticing. I managed to steal a micro-uploader from the IT department, a device no bigger than my thumb. The plan was to do it in the office late one night, using the chaos of a system-wide software update as cover. The night of the hack, my nerves were shot. I felt like I was walking a tightrope over a canyon, dressed in a simple black dress and heels. I looked like an employee working late, but under my desk. My hands were trembling as I connected the micro-uploader to my datapad, where Cypher was waiting with the code. The final step was the most dangerous. I had to connect the uploader to my own body. The port was located at the base of my neck, usually hidden by my hair. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. I reached back, my fingers finding the small, almost invisible seam in my skin. "Okay, I'm going in," I whispered into my datapad's mic. "Cypher, you ready?" "Ready, dollface. Godspeed," he replied. I pressed the uploader to the port, a faint click, and it was connected. "Uploading now," I said. A progress bar appeared on my screen. 10%, 20%. My body tensed, waiting for the sweet release of freedom, for the moment the nanobots would go dormant and I would be myself again. 30%, 40%. A sudden, sharp pain shot through my skull. The lights in the office flickered. On my screen, a new window popped up, overriding everything. It was a live video feed of Ethan Keller, sitting in his office 50 floors above me, a calm, knowing smile on his face. "Did you really think I wouldn't have a back door into my own creation?" he said, his voice echoing in my ears. "I've been monitoring your network traffic for weeks. Jake, I must say, I'm impressed by your persistence." Panic flared. "The upload," I yelled to Cypher. "Abort!" "It's too late!" Cypher's voice was frantic. "He's hijacking it. He's reversing the data flow." Keller's smile widened. "You wanted to purge the system. Let's see what the system thinks about that. I'm initiating a diagnostic. Let's find out who you really are." The world dissolved into a blinding white light. The pain in my head was unbearable. I wasn't in the office anymore. I was standing in a white, featureless space. In front of me was a mirror. But the reflection wasn't mine. It was Jake, the old Jake, broad-shouldered, scruffy, wearing his favorite gray hoodie, staring back at me with angry, accusing eyes. "What have you done to us?" he snarled, his voice a low growl in my memory. Jade looked down at my own hands, slender and pale. "I'm trying to fix it," I said, my voice soft and feminine. "Fix it? You're letting him win." Jake's reflection slammed a fist against the glass of the mirror. "You walk around in his clothes, you talk with his voice, you even smiled at him." "I didn't. It wasn't me," I cried, tears welling in my eyes. "The nanobots." "It's a convenient excuse," Jake sneered. "A part of you likes this. Doesn't it? The attention, the feeling of being beautiful?" "No," I shouted. "I'm not his doll." My reflection changed. Now it was Jade staring back at me, her expression calm and serene. "But you're happier than you've ever been, aren't you?" she asked, her voice my own. Jake was angry, always fighting, but Jade, she fits in. People like her. Ethan likes her. "I don't want him to like me," I screamed, clutching my head. The two reflections, Jake and Jade, began to flicker, overlapping, their voices talking over each other, a cacophony of my own internal war. The counter-hack code was turning my own psyche against itself, forcing me to confront the schism in my identity. The stress on my system was too much. The pain in my head reached a crescendo, and the world went black. I collapsed onto the floor of the office, the uploader clattering beside me. My last conscious thought was that the hack had failed. Keller had won again, but this time he hadn't just beaten the hacker, He had broken the man. The battle between Jake and Jade had a winner, and as I lost consciousness, I feared it wasn't the one I had been fighting for. I woke up to the soft beeping of a medical monitor and the feeling of luxurious, high thread count sheets against my skin. My head throbbed with a dull ache. I slowly opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was the panoramic view of the city at night, spread out like a carpet of diamonds behind a wall of floor-to-ceiling glass. I was in a bedroom, not a hospital. A lavish, minimalist bedroom that screamed money and power. I was in Ethan Keller's penthouse. I sat up, my body feeling weak but stable. The frantic, humming energy of the nanobots was gone, replaced by a quiet sense of equilibrium. I looked down at myself. I was wearing a simple, incredibly soft silk nightgown. My hands, my legs, my body, it all felt settled. The transformation felt complete, permanent. "I see you're awake." Ethan was sitting in a chair in the corner of the room watching me. He wasn't smiling his usual smug smirk. His expression was serious, almost contemplative. There was a glass of whiskey in his hand. My first instinct was rage. I opened my mouth to scream at him, to curse him. But the anger felt distant, muffled. The fight had gone out of me. "What did you do?" I asked, and the voice that came out was Jade's, quiet and tired. There was no internal autocorrection, it was just my voice now. "The counter hack you and your friends designed was crude but powerful," he explained, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "When I reversed it, it forced the nanobots into a feedback loop with your neural pathways. It essentially triggered a system reboot. The code fought itself, and in the process, it stabilized, it integrated fully with your biology." He took a sip of his whiskey. "The changes are irreversible now. Jade, the nanobots can't be removed without catastrophic damage to your nervous system. This is who you are now." I just stared at him, the words washing over me. Irreversible. The last desperate hope I had been clinging to was gone. Jake was truly gone. A ghost that no longer even had a shell to haunt. There was only Jade. He must have seen the despair on my face, because he stood up and walked over to the bed. Sitting on the edge, he didn't try to touch me. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," he said, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "At first, yes, it was a lesson. You tried to ruin my life's work, to expose secrets you didn't understand. I wanted to teach you what it felt like to have your identity stripped away, to lose control. I chose this specific transformation because it was the furthest thing I could imagine from the hyper-masculine, aggressive hacker persona you hid behind." He looked at me, his gaze direct and uncharacteristically sincere. But then something unexpected happened. The nanobots I designed are adaptive. They're a learning AI. They don't just follow programming, they learn from their host's biometrics, their hormonal responses, their subconscious desires. They started learning from you. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. "The shame, the anger, that was all Jake," he said. "But there were other signals, a flicker of curiosity when you first saw yourself in the mirror, a subconscious easing of tension when Kelly complimented your appearance, a spike in dopamine when you wore the skinwear suit. The AI interpreted those signals. It learned that a part of you, a deep, repressed part you probably never even knew existed, wasn't fighting the change. It was embracing it. The AI concluded that its primary directive, to recalibrate you, aligned with a subconscious desire to become this new person, so it accelerated the process. You didn't just become a puppet, Jade, you became what you were meant to be. The AI didn't just build a new shell, it helped a new person emerge." I stared at him, my mind reeling. Was he lying? Was this just another manipulation? But as I searched my own feelings, I found a terrifying kernel of truth in his words. I remembered the strange sense of rightness in the skinwear, the involuntary smile in the mirror, the small secret thrill of looking beautiful in the gala dress. Jake had been screaming in protest, but had another part of me been quietly enjoying the ride? Tears began to stream down my face. They weren't just tears of loss for the man I had been. They were tears of confusion, of release, of a profound and terrifying self-recognition. I was mourning Jake, but I was also, finally, meeting Jade. I started, my voice breaking. "I don't know who I am anymore." "I know," he said softly. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, he gently took my hand. His touch was different this time. It wasn't proprietary or controlling. It was gentle wool, comforting. The nanobots no longer needed to simulate a response. The response was already there. A warmth spread from his hand through my arm, a simple human connection. I cried for a long time, and he just sat there, holding my hand, silent. He wasn't my captor anymore. He wasn't my tormentor. He was the only other person in the world who knew the truth of who I was and who I had become. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the city, my tears subsided. I felt empty, but also calm. The war inside me was over. I looked at our joined hands. This man had destroyed my life, and in doing so, had given me a new one. My feelings for him were a tangled mess of hate, resentment, and a strange, newfound dependency. It wasn't desire, not like the AI had forced on me before. It was something more complex, a bond forged in the most bizarre fire imaginable. I lay back against the pillows, exhausted. Ethan stood up. "Get some rest, Jade," he said. He started to walk away but paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." He left, closing the door softly behind him. I lay there, watching the sunrise paint the city in hues of pink and gold. I was Jade Parker. The name no longer felt like a costume. It felt like my own. And for the first time, I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to change it back, even if I could. The rebirth was complete. The question now was what to do with this new life. Life in Ethan's penthouse was a gilded cage, but a strangely comfortable one. The war inside me had ended, leaving a quiet, contemplative peace. Ethan treated me with a cautious respect, a blend of creator, guardian, and something more that neither of us had the vocabulary for. We were two people bound by an impossible secret. He had stopped being my warden and had become, in a strange way, my only confidant. But my hacker instincts, the core of who Jake had been, hadn't vanished entirely. They had just been dormant. I watched as Ethan navigated the treacherous waters of his own company, his Project Chimera. The nanobot technology that had remade me was his most dangerous and coveted secret. The Future Tech Board of Directors, a faceless group of old money and ruthless ambition, knew a fraction of what it could do, and they wanted control. They saw it as the ultimate weapon in corporate espionage, social control, and military applications. Ethan saw it as a tool for human evolution, albeit one he had tested in the most unethical way possible. He was losing the battle for his own company. Rumors of his unauthorized human trials had begun to leak within the highest levels of the corporation. The board launched a full-scale internal investigation. They wanted to strip him of his CEO title, seize his research, and take control of the technology. They saw me not as a person, but as Asset J, the living proof of Ethan's reckless genius and their key to owning it. One evening, Ethan came to me, his face grim. "They're closing in," he said, pacing in front of the glass wall overlooking the city. "The board is holding a vote in 2 days to have me removed. They'll take everything, and they'll come for you, Jade. They'll want to study you, dissect you, replicate what happened. You'll be their lab rat for the rest of your life." A cold dread filled me. I had finally found a fragile piece in my new identity, and now I was facing a new kind of prison, one far worse than Ethan's initial game. "What can we do?" I asked. "There's only one option," he said, stopping to look at me. "The core data for Project Chimera is on a single, isolated server in this building. If that data is destroyed, the project is set back decades. They'll have the nanobots in you, but they won't have the roadmap to create more. The project dies, and your secret is safe." He paused. "But it would also be my ruin. Everything I've worked for, gone." He was giving me the choice. In his office was a terminal that could access that server. He could give me his credentials. I could be the one to press the button. It was the ultimate test. Would I choose revenge and save myself, or would I protect the man who had, in his own twisted way, created me? But I saw a third option. Revenge on Ethan felt pointless now. He was as much a prisoner of his creation as I was. Protecting him meant condemning myself to a life on the run. The real enemy was the system itself, the insatiable corporate greed that saw people as assets and technology as a weapon. "There's another way," I said. "I won't destroy the data, and I won't let them have it." The old dull-faced spark reignited in my eyes. I had a plan. For the next 48 hours, Ethan and I worked side by side in his office. He gave me unrestricted access to the Future Tech mainframe. It felt like coming home. My fingers danced across the holographic keys, weaving through firewalls and bypassing security protocols with an elegance that even surprised me. Ethan watched, a look of awe on his face as he saw the legendary hacker he'd tried to crush in action. I wasn't just Jade Parker, the quiet assistant. I wasn't just Jake Miller, the angry anarchist. I was something new, a synthesis of both. On the morning of the board meeting, as they gathered to cast their votes to oust him, I executed my final command. I didn't delete the Project Chimera data. I encrypted it with a key so complex that not even Future Tech's quantum computers could break it. Then I released it, all of it, anonymously, to every major news outlet, every government watchdog, every hacktivist group on the planet. I exposed Future Tech's illegal experiments, the board's plans for the technology, everything. Then, with a final keystroke, I initiated the FreedomXC file I'd written. It was a worm that targeted my own digital footprint. It erased every trace of Jake Miller and Jade Parker from every server on Earth. Medical records, work history, social media, security footage, all of it vanished into the digital ether. As far as the world was concerned, neither of us had ever existed. As chaos erupted in the Future Tech Tower and news alerts began screaming across the globe, I walked out of the building, a ghost in the shell, now a ghost in the world. I didn't look back. 1 year later, the bell above the door chimed, a cheerful sound in the cozy warmth of the small Brooklyn coffee shop. The man who entered looked tired, older than his years. The stress of losing his company and becoming a global pariah had taken its toll. Ethan Keller, the former techno-god, now ran this quiet, analog cafe, a penance of his own choosing. He was wiping down the counter when a new server approached him, holding a coffee pot. She was new, hired just that morning. She had dark, shoulder-length hair and a quiet, confident demeanor. "Hi," she said, her voice a soft, pleasant alto. "Do you want a refill, sir?" Ethan looked up, ready to give a polite refusal, but he froze. He looked into her eyes. They were a startling shade of green, and they were achingly familiar. They held a history he could never forget: the fire of a hacker, the vulnerability of a prisoner, and the serene strength of a survivor. A shadow of Jake Parker was still there, but the person looking at him was someone entirely new, someone who was at peace. A slow smile spread across Ethan's face, the first genuine smile he'd had in a year. She smiled back, a small, knowing smile of her own. "I hear you make the best coffee in the city." Freedom, she had realized, wasn't about reclaiming the past or escaping the present. It wasn't about being Jake or being Jade. It was about having the power to pour a cup of coffee on a Tuesday morning and choose, for herself, who she wanted to be. And in that quiet, unassuming moment, she was finally, completely free.